I guess, in the vein of perfectionism, Harrison Hollingsworth talked yesterday. He's a worship leader at Redeemer Presbyterian in New York. Also conductor for the New York City Ballet. He talked about how ultimately the toil of artists is like the toil of anyone who works, and it's it's vain and utterly our work just turns to ashes. And it was classically Presbyterian in that way. And how the legacy we participate in is handing on the truths we've received and possessed. And that, we talked a lot more about renown and a lot less about fame. And I guess, your own journey, as you said in your testimony, there is kind of that movement away from itinerant ministry where you're getting famous and more towards renown, more towards legacy, away from that perfectionism and out of the spotlight and into handing on the old things of the church, whether or not your name gets remembered. Could you exhort some of the guys and gals listening right now to maybe think on that on a deeper level?
Yeah, man. I came up in a time where CCM was, a big deal, and but there was something new happening. CCM had hit a contemporary Christian music had hit a place where concerts were big and the artists were good at what they did. And they had refreshed the church in a way that the church hadn't been refreshed, but it had gone on for a while. And these great men and women that had refreshed the church, they had begun to know what they were doing. And there's something about knowing what we're doing that starts to unfold on itself. Mm. So around that time, I'm 17, 18, 19, amongst a whole other generation of guys and girls that are experiencing the same thing as me. I had disconnected from CCM, but I falling in love with Jesus and just wanting to write and be creative. And that was going on around the world in my age group, and God breathed on it, and it gave us a sense of that modern worship movement, is what they'd called it at the time, where this new thing was popping up. It was a different kind of beautiful than CCM. It became like this raw kind of grassroots. These guys and girls are just writing songs because they love Jesus, and everyone's just singing them, and they can just sing and sing and sing, and they sense the presence of God. And as time fast forwarded, and it became my living, I also started to understand how to do it. Just like the people before me, they learned how to do what they were doing. That started out so fresh, you learn how to do it. My thing started out fresh, and then I learned how to do it. And as I learned how to do it, the opposite thing happens. The freshness leaves, at least from my life it did. Mm. And I began to try to churn and turn things that just weren't working anymore. Mm. And that's when I discovered the beauty of descent for me was to humble myself under God's hand and let him do whatever with my life that he wanted to do. And I think what he was choosing for me was to father and pastor, because in my journey in creativity, that's where I was. I was here to pass on a gift of not how to do things, but the heart behind doing things, about being creative and authentic, and not worrying about originality all the time, about learning to impact the world around you and maybe not the whole entire world, and learning to be communal and letting people know your story. And then if the world around you hears what you created in that smaller communal world, and that's amazing too. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody that writes songs for the world to sing. I've got friends that write songs for the world to sing. But what I'm saying is when when you're trying to live out somebody else's life, it never feels good.
Yeah.
When you're trying to live your life in Jesus, you start to feel the impact of that and the legacy that can come from that. And that there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
The days and months and seasons and years that I live like fully hearted myself in Jesus as a man, husband, father, leader, pastor, I feel more fulfilled, and my punches are so much more hard, so much more impacting. Where my younger years were like, I'm just punching at everything, hoping that something works. In my older years, I'm waiting, and when I'm going to hit something, it's going to be hard, and it's going to be built out of a more substantial motivation and reasoning.
Yeah.
And I still have really terrible motivations, really sinful motivations, but those are getting more purified. I'm accepting them as they are, and then I'm waiting for God's motivation to come up inside of me.
Sure.
And go, yeah, I want God to use my life in a really big way, but that really big way might be for only 5 people, and that's going to be beautiful.